Well, hello there, and welcome once again to my little arty corner of the internet. It's Sunday the 2nd of January and it is 2022, New Year, and with that comes a monthly challenge in the 7 Forests 5 Rivers challenge group, and they're tagged as hashtag 7F5R challenge. It's a Facebook group. I did the Tangle pattern challenge back in October for Inktober with them, and I was really looking forward to this one because fragments are a fun way of playing around with things rather than whole patterns. And I think anybody who's a regular viewer here knows how much I like to work with variations on a theme. So I didn't video yesterday's one because I had the sketchbook flip through, but I will have a look at yesterday's with you and draw a couple of them so you get the idea of how this works. In Zentangle speak, these are called fragments. They're little tiles that you can put together. You can use them as they are. You can draw them big and use them as something called a reticulum. A reticulum is basically a network, a grid pattern, or a pattern of, sort of like an area shape of any kind that you can then fill with other patterns and tangles. So fragments are these individual parts that make up an overall pattern. And yesterday's was one of my favourites, which is well, and I believe I've done well before on here, though perhaps not all of these fragments, because part of the challenge is they've got triangular fragments, square fragments. I think they've got circular fragments, and they've also got these seed-shaped fragments. And that got me thinking, as I do. And as you know, it can be quite dangerous if I start to think, what other shapes could I use? The answer is lots. Any you can think of, any you want to draw. I did stop at 6-sided hexagons though. I thought going up to octagons and decagons would just, and dodecagons, and other sides would just be ridiculous. But if you want to, you can. They are basically, triangles put together. 6 triangles make a hexagon if you split it up. But I was using it just as a hexagon. So there's different ways of putting these together to get the same end result. But I have others. I have got parallelograms here. No, rhombuses. Is it a rhombus? No, it's not. It's a parallelogram where you've got 2 sides parallel and the opposite 2 are at different angles. I have got rhombuses, which rhombuses are basically diamond shapes, but they can be a proper diamond shape or you can stretch them. So this is a rhombus, and any of these from the corner would be considered a rhombus, I suppose, but not strictly. I have got, I can't remember what these are called, but they are irregular parallelogram. They're parallelogram. No, it's not a parallelogram because none of the sides are parallel to each. Oh yeah, there are 2, but it's an irregular one. I've forgotten the names of shapes. But I've also got in here some teardrop shapes as well as the seed shapes. I've got a random kind of shape here, which I've been told is very similar to a new tangle reticulum called Pangea. And I've got lots of variations as well. I started with the square because a square, whatever I do in a square can be transferred to a different shape. It's that simple. But I did some of the shapes and different ways actually of joining shapes together. I've even got semicircular ones here. So they come under the class of, I suppose, a triangle, but they are semicircular. And I did mean to pop a semicircle in because, or a vaguely circular shape. And for well, you start with a central point. I've used circles in all of these, either filled in or open with something inside it. And you draw from the middle out, and you always create the same kind of shape. So if I draw from here to this corner, that line makes a number 6. So you draw it like you would a number 6. I prefer to go from I vary. I go both ways, but it's it's easier to go from the middle to the corner. It's easier to judge where you're going to go, I think. So this one is also a number 6, but because it's upside down, it looks like a Q or a 9. And then I'm going to just pick somewhere along this curve, somewhere vaguely central. It doesn't have to be exactly central. And there we have well in a semicircular shape. I know that if you use these kinds of shapes, they're called, there's polygons, and they call them, which look like orange segments. They've got a lip in the middle, but they would work exactly the same. You just pick where you want the corners to go and you can pop that in. Not so easy to do. I think I made that a bit exaggerated. Let me have a look for another space. There's a little space here. So the polygon shape is you've got a gentle arch there and then a bigger one. So it's a bit like a crescent moon. Again. And fit that in. So this kind of idea will fit in anywhere. So I'll do a couple of these with you. And what's more, I've got a tile. This is Distress Oxide, and yep, it does create a fuss and a problem with my pen. But you know what? I'm not worried too much. In fact, I've discovered that a pen that is just about on its last legs, or with the rect tip, is actually really good for doing those feathering lines, or those lines I use for shading, because it doesn't run as wet and as smoothly, which is great. So I'll do well. The original well pattern has a circle in the middle, and I'm going to pop another one in the middle, and then you draw these. I use number 6 often, and you go around, so you go from the middle and you draw around that circle and then launch off and go off and go to the corner to create a curve there. Now, these curves can be as curvy or as flat as you like. You get a different feel with each one. So if I do another one next door, pop that in there, and if I do this really curvy or curvier, let me try and see. It's the same pattern, but you get a different feel with it. In the same way, if I just do them vaguely flat, then it's the same thing but different. I haven't exaggerated those very much, but enough. Now, the original well pattern involves going from the corner and to the center of the arc the next way round. So with these, you go out and then you go back this way, and it creates a petal. I go roughly about 2/3 of the way down, because it makes quite a nice plump petal. But if you go, you can do it so they meet back on themselves like this, and you get something that's a lot more like a propeller. Like that. And it won't be so noticeable on this one, but I'll do another one underneath. And instead of going from this corner there, I can go backwards, and it creates a whole different shape and feel. I'm not entirely sure if this is a Zentangle pattern already, There's so many of them, it's hard to keep track of what is and what isn't, and what somebody else has created or hasn't. Could do it with a Google, drop in search, I suppose. But there's this here, and of course you can leave them just as they are. So that's one way of doing, that's the kind of original Zentangle pattern, where it was kind of like petals, but this is also well, and they have done variations of well, like there's a new one called Oh Well, I think it is, and used it in different ways because there are lots of ways of joining things together. And then it's how you add pattern. There's lots of opportunities to add pattern in these. These spaces here, you could aura. Which adds a different pattern. Then in a grid, I would actually try to make the aura meet with the one next door. So if I was going to draw one here, I'd make it meet, the ends of this one become the starting point for the curvy triangle on that side. So that's one way. Another way is to find one of your original lines and then aura it on the side, so that you would just make the same kind of shape. Not this side, because you can't curve it at the end. Well, you could, but it doesn't work out. And you can aura all the way down. And I like this one in some ways, because it will echo, not echo, it makes it feel that it's curling over, like you've got paper corners of paper curling. So that's quite nice. You could do these as well, but I quite like leaving them blank alternately, and of course you can fill those in the same way. Another one that I particularly like is going from the corner to a line like this, and shadow brings this to life. And again, it gives it that feeling of things being curved and curled under. And what helps is because I've drawn this on a big enough scale, it's easy to add these in. On the tiny scale on my sketchbook page, it's not so easy to do, but these little things always form an interesting pattern. And here I've got a different kind of shape, and I can actually go and exaggerate that curved shape at the top. My pen's not the best, said this one is, but I'm happy to use it. So there's a different feel here. You could potentially do that there, but I think you'd lose that feeling of that curviness. So that's another one. Other ones I did, and these were fun because I popped circles in the corners. Yep, I did. You could put sort of like an arc there. You could put a box there. You could put anything there you fancy. But I did these, and I created an S shape. So this is a bit more complicated, but it's the same idea. For some reason, I've chosen to go the opposite way. So instead of going as number 6, I am going like a D shape. It is like a D. Okay, but the principle's the same whichever way you do it. And this is a bit harder because you've got to remember which side of this circle you go to. So it is just thinking about how you draw the S shape in. But it is exactly the same thing. Instead of having a smooth curve, we've now got an S shape. So there's that. And this one then was fun to either leave on its own, but also to do this kind of thing too, because it depends which side you go. I can see making sort of like a rice shape echo here. I can also feel going back. There's so many options, and I didn't really explore all of the options for things like this. So that way is identical to how I created these. And then if I do another one, popping those circles in, popping these S shapes in. Now I've actually gone and done these the other way around, haven't I? It matters. So yeah, I have. See, I've gone from the bottom to the top of this one, and this one I've gone from the top to the bottom there. Okay, so I'd go back this way, but if I do it in this kind of manner, where I go back on myself, is it? Have a look. Yeah, that's how I want to go. So it's still like that, isn't it? Just try one more. And let me do it. I'll do it, have these going the same way as I did the one next door. So going from the top of this central one to the bottom over there and there, and bring it back. So with that one I went this way, and this one I'm going this way. That's it. Yeah. It's hard to compare when you've got the lines going in quite different directions. But yeah, I can see that one is the same as that. I've just made these quite narrower, whereas this one is quite different in how you get the curve. And another one that's quite, got one here that's quite favourite. I think it's about adding how you embellish the petals or these shapes, really. And I quite like doing I suppose you'd call it a tethered aura, where I draw a line, the aura's this outside one, and joins at the point, and then the point back. And that just gives that almost like a border to the inner section, but it also helps to separate the petal from whatever you do in the edge as well. Because I'm very graphically minded, so I quite like just black here, or an aura, and then a black one. So stacking them. Lots of ideas here. You could do more of these here, or you could just choose to go. See, I want my stamens to come off the centre, so I think I could have them just following like that, and that would work okay. And you could have a series of them, depending on the size of the petal and how you've arranged the first one. There we go. So there's other things that you can do as well. Creating a shape like that inside would work. With these, you could aura this section to separate it. Let me have a look. Is this something unusual I did? There was something that I did do here that is kind of a variation, but also isn't. it's sort of like putting another tangle pattern inside. And this started where I auraed there and then went from auraed to this line but didn't overlap. So I've got these kind of woven feeling going on here. So again, I'll do it on this one. You turn the paper so you can see. So I aura that one that you would, I suppose, if you were doing this version, and then aura that one and alternate it. And it gives a nice woven kind of feeling to it. And that's quite nice with just two of them. I think on my examples, it gets too busy. But doing them so you've got some sections there, and the tangle pattern between would fit in there quite nicely as well, I think. Using different colours to add to the embellishments and patterns would work nicely as well. And you know, it's just a basis to start from and see where you go to. And as I've said, it's all about shadows and highlights. So that's another one that I'm going to, I'll pop this on here with some washi tape so I can flip it, I'll hinge it, because that gives me some more ideas as well as to what to do and different ways of doing things and looking at them. I never stop. So today's, and I'll do a bit of today's, how did I label that? So it's (2022), and we have, I think today's, if I remember rightly, I'm just going to get my PDF up so I can see it, is poke leaf. So I like to label it. My hand lettering isn't brilliant when I'm doing it rushed, but I'm happy for that. And again, poke leaf is many people's favourite pattern. And there are so many variations of it. So if I start with a square, then poke leaf is drawn. The original way by Zentangle is you put the stem in, you put a C shape there, and then you draw a leaf shape in like this. And that's the basic poke leaf as a fragment. It can be used as a very organic tangle, which is how I like it, but it's going to be interesting to experiment or explore with this. So again, I'm going to pop a poke leaf in. And for this one, I'm going to put one of those curvy sort of like folds in because they're really quite cute. Okay. So let's have a look. I'm going to put a dot in the middle, and this could be interesting considering I'm using quite a thick pen. I could change to the O2, but I'm not going to. So I've created 4 stems. So I will pop 4 poke leaves in, and they can meet at the middle. Actually, that's really quite cute. That would make a really interesting pattern. Where they meet, you'd get these stems forming a little cross, and a different way round with the poke leaves sort of like radiating out from that as well. So that would be quite nice. You could try and draw them from the middle, but I think that would be, oh, let's have a go, because it might work out. So here's my middle. So I want to have 4 stems in the middle. put the caps on, and then leaf shapes going this way. So it's the same, but here in this one you'd have these black lines at the ends of the stems. Here you've got them open as if they're going from one central point. But of course you could put variation there. I could put a circle there and have the stems that way. Quite small stems here. She says going the wrong way. And here I'm going to make really plumptious leaves, a bit like petals, but really making use of the square shape just to add that. And I think with these it would be quite nice to add these frills because it adds that feeling of, well, variety. It just adds something to the leaves. And the outside edges, to help fill this in, then there's lots of ways of doing that. I could just colour them in black. I could add tipple, is it? All the little circles pop together, which are quite fun. I think I would, on this one, colour that in black in the middle because it helps. Pop that there. Just put lots of fine lines in. Could use a different colour pen. I'm choosing to use all black, I think, for this challenge. This one I could just keep a fine kind of border between them so that that helps to define them as well. So there's that. Okie dokes, let's have a look. What else could we do? Using them in reticular. A reticular is a grid like this, and this is plain on the back, but you could arrange them all so they're all identical. You could mirror them side to side. You could rotate them, so you start there, top left, top right even, the point of the leaf. There, top right, then move it round to bottom right, then move it round to bottom left, and so on, and work out a way of repeating that along the rows. If you're going to rotate it, you'd end up with something like this, or this. So there are, this is a way of doing that in a smaller fashion, I suppose. Different kinds of leaves. Well, having a stem here, so I could create a leaf like that instead. I think I'd prefer the poke leaf stem to go a bit further, but it's kind of an ivy leaf shape. So I've just started here and drawn a line up to the corner, another line to the corner, sort of like, and then a V shape where it goes out to the corner there. So a different shaped leaf. And let's see if we can do another different shaped leaf. Learning from that one is, instead of the rounded leaf, do that one. That leaves some interesting shapes here that, I'm not sure what I'd do there, but I think if I put it into a grid pattern, I would work it out because I'd be able to see how those shapes join and what I want to do with them. And with this one as well, it's got that potential to be auraed, and perhaps even to put that central kind of line in. I'm not sure I like that one. you have to try these things to see what happens. So again, let's have another one. And this one I'm going to do like almost like poke leaf would be, but I suppose it's a variation on this one, but instead of having the pointy corners, we've gone for roundedy ones. And instead of taking the poke leaf right out to the edge of the box, you just have the stem at the edge and leave an aura around it, which would be quite simple. Okay. Have a look at what other shapes I could come up with. That's quite a fun one. So we've got that kind of shape going on. And what we haven't done, I haven't done them from the sides, have I? Because that would be another way, instead of from the corner, let's pop them from the side. I've got the central point there, so I'll do the heart-shaped classic poke leaf, if you will. So that creates a different pattern, and again, where these meet, you'll get meta patterns forming and so on. This one you can't, it's like this one and this one, you can't really rotate them. This is a rotation of that, but in the pattern you just repeat them again and again. But that's quite fun. And I wonder about this. I'm going to use a pencil here because I want to just divide this into two. Because that way I get them like that, so that's quite fun. I had thought about putting them in sort of like at random to pack them in, but then it would be so hard to repeat that pattern. I think with reticular you need to keep things fairly simple. Okay, so what else could we do? How about half leaves going around like this? Because that could work quite nicely, I think. Oh, that creates a really interesting pattern in the middle, doesn't it? Just put some little marks in there. That's interesting. So if we put another one to the next side, we would get the poke leaves side by side, but you get this really interesting shape in between them. That's fun. Well, I never. And I suppose we could do it for the other leaves as well. So let's have a look. And let's make these a curvy stem. Here I'm drawing that C shape, but I'm creating a little black area here, almost like that's poking into the leaf. So I wonder, so again, there's that interesting shape there, but with those there, so it would work nicely. And I'm just going to try with one of the ivy leaves. I wonder. This is going to be very challenging, but I think you get the idea of what I'm doing. So the ivy leaf, I'd need to go up, in and out. So up, in and out. Up, in, back, up, down. So it's like a V shape, and then back. So that creates a more ornate and fancy pattern in the middle. Well, well, well. No, it was yesterday as well. Come on, tea. I haven't had breakfast yet. I'm not in the mood for it, but tea always. Right. Okay, so that's in a square. So what about in a different shape? Now, yesterday I had lots of different shapes, didn't I? I think I might try a diamond shape for this. Well, more of a lozenge shape. And let's have a look, because I think I'm going to need the stem quite a bit longer. I think you have to look at the length of the sides and the height you've got and work out where it would be best to fit. Oh, that's an elegant one, isn't it? And it would be lovely in like it's got that stained glass window feel, hasn't it? So again, it could just be repeated, or mirrors, which would be interesting. Sometimes I like to draw them side by side if I can't visualize how it would be. This one, I think I'm going to have two, but I'm going to have them kind of going like this. Now, I don't actually know if that would work. I think it would work as a pattern. Depends how you put them together. But that's quite fun. And this one, you could, I'm trying to think, could we actually have? No, I don't think you could actually have three in there. Might if it's this way round, possibly, because we've got the opportunity for three stems here, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to pop one in there, one going there, and the other one going there as well, and making sure they look like they're popped behind. So that's an interesting one. It's clumsy, but as an idea, it's something that can be refined. This is the thing with these, they are sketches, and sometimes they are clumsy, but then you as I do them, I think, oh yeah, that would work, but I'd need to do this. I think the central one needs to be thinner to give these more of an option to actually grow, and perhaps these need to be longer or angled that way. So that would work nicely. What about, oh, one of these? How would we do that? I think this one may be a case of having them at opposites, perhaps. Let's have a look. And perhaps meeting in the middle. So these are essentially almost mirror images of each other's, but you'd get that kind of pattern going on. Interesting, not sure I like it, but it's possible. It would be different depending on how long and thin or tall and squat you make the shape. So I think with this one, let's have a look at perhaps popping one there. It's the opportunity for a very strange shaped one, perhaps putting a seed in there. because that's always possible, is to add things like seeds, which add to the pattern as well. So one next door, we'd have a grouping of seeds, however you do it. Do this one like that, but from the other side add another, but have it behind. So crossed leaves, and that's possible to do there. You can have them overlapping as you wish. Not the best shape for an organic pattern, possibly, though I quite like that idea. And it is finding which corner you start the leaf from. So if I do this shape again, and instead of starting from a corner on the short side, long side, let's try it from the shorter side. And that fits better, but it's still not wonderful. But again, it could be a case of popping a seeding just to fill that space. Okay, so I had those. Let's have a look at these kinds of, this kind of seed shape. This would work, I think, because it's already a leaf shape, so it's almost like putting a leaf within a leaf. So I've got this edge there, and I think I'd like to have an aura around that and make something of that area there. And I think a very graphic black would be nice. It's sort of like really putting in the a really deep background and making the leaf the star of the show. This shape, this kind of shape, reminds me of auras that you see around biblical figures in stained glass windows. You sometimes get this very pointy ovally shape, which they're calling, it's called a seed shape, the seed shape fragments in Zentangle. So that works nicely, but I think if we make it a little broader, I think we could happily get that kind of shape in. Even more so if I create a longer stem, I think, because I can have these parts really filling in. That actually works quite nicely. And talking of nice shapes, if we go to circles, this is something that I have recently yoinked from a medieval tapestry, illuminated manuscript, but that you see them carved into you know, the stonework in churches or in stained glass and so on. So that's actually a quite nice shape. I'm beginning to look at these and think, oh, that would actually work vaguely nicely in one of these shapes as well, especially if we make it a nice long stem. Even put a circle around it. And it does look like the club symbol from cards as well. Not the best aura, but that's quite fun. That works nicely. And can pop frills on like that. So that's quite fun. Now, what shape is missing here? I wonder. Well, hexagons are, but triangles really. And this one, interesting. There we are. Poke leaf stem, just very thin, and I think this is the most obvious way, to my mind, of adding these, and it actually works quite nicely. I'd have to leave those middle bits clear or uncoloured so you can see the stems, because I've just drawn the stems as lines. Fill them in, and that actually works quite nicely. And again, I'd want to aura it. I think we could have, ooh, a very big one here. And I think this would work quite nicely for that idea of semi-leaves, I suppose. There. And it creates this really interesting shapes, doesn't it? So that's an interesting one. I suppose it depends how you draw the triangles that you're going to use in your reticulum, your pattern, but it's this is almost leaf shaped on its own, and of course leaves, when they're drawn set individually, do look a lot like little trees all on their own. But another way of framing one. So a lot of these ideas are transferable here, as are the shapes of the leaves. This would work lovely for more ivy shaped poke leaf, or it's that club shaped again that's coming forward here. But take that and there we are, we have an ivy leaf. This one is, I've just chosen along the centre to just put these shapes in, rather than draw the whole leaf in. And around the stem you'd have it split by the stem. So that works nicely as well. And just another triangle because I can. And let's try putting them in so they meet at the centre. Again, I feel I'm going to need quite long stems here to give me some space to put the leaf in. That works nicely as well. So lots and lots of options. I haven't filled the page in. My mind needs to tick over things. This is what happens. But let's have a look at how we can add fill these spaces in. So one way is to add aura, like this. Again, in a grid pattern, if these spaces match up side to side, I'd try to match the auras lines up so we've got the same number. I think overall in a pattern you wouldn't notice too much, but that's me being a perfectionist. So we've got that there. And I think I'd also like perhaps to pop something in the middle, like a stem. That's quite cute. With this one, I'm just going to fill that one in. is possible to do all kinds of things here, I think. Let's pop some very teeny tiny checkerboard pattern in. And filling them in. That could be fun. And of course that then would also, with this pattern, you know, you put lots of these together in a grid, then these lines would go from one side to the next, and you'd get that checkerboard pattern in between. It could also be fun to do it in an op art kind of fashion, where you curve the lines and perhaps have them curving this way. Op art is short for optical art, and it's about using lines to create a feeling of volume and of dimension and folding of space, I suppose. They're optical illusions, and they're often very, very, very graphic in black and white. And by bending a grid shape, you get that. You can get more complicated by making the lines closer together, the further away you want something to be, but just by bending it gives it a different feeling, I think. So there's things like that. Filling in with other patterns. Like here it would be easy enough to add some really fine and delicate print on. Spirals. Again, this would be lovely in a different colour pen, but I'm electing to use just black here. You get the idea. It could also be fun to actually fill in the space with leaves, almost like you've got a drift of them. So a tinier version of the shape of a leaf, or a leaf shape. Just have them going at random directions and overlapping, just to create a background texture behind the leaf. That's quite fun. Well, I think it is. So a different kind of texture. Things like aura-ing around. The whole design just to help this to stand out. And I think in this case I'd want to do something with these sections, perhaps make them black or patterns. This is going to be an amazing space for drawing things in. I can just see it with lots of different things in. Trying to think what I'd like to do there. I don't know, it's the problem. It could just be something as simple as Knightsbridge again, this checkerboard pattern, which would be fab in these, but it also could be others like, oh gosh, my head's going now. What else could we pop in there? Anything really. Oh no, I hate this when my brain goes blank. Could be something like Hollybell, just like overlapping planks. Membrane art by Thomas Padros would also be fun here, I think, possibly. These little curvy bits are a little bit on the challenging side because you're not going to get much of an overlap, you know, of the shapes there, but you can get some by cunningly drawing them in. in a way like they're hidden behind each other. And then filling in these sections just to add that contrast. I'd actually use a thicker pen for that. I think you get the idea. So this has been an absolute pleasure. Gee, that would work lovely. Or filling it in black and putting white spots in so it looks like you're looking into space. That would be fun. And start a ink black starry night. So this has been fun. I'd like to say thank you once again for joining me. I hope this has inspired you. When I finish this later today, I've added colour and texture and perhaps some more ideas. I've posted the finished one on social media, so you can find my links to the social media accounts I use. It's probably not DeviantArt though, so I tend to put finished, more arty stuff up there nowadays. But definitely on the 7F5R challenge Facebook group. That's what it's called, 7F5R challenge. I'll put a link in the description box below the video so you can find it there. And on my Facebook, Instagram, my blog, Twitter, wherever you can find me. So you can see what I do with colour and shadow as well. And I'm looking forward to doing this. I always do. So just one thing before I go. I don't know if you noticed, but I've got a lot of bling on this side. And with a lot of it, I've added chalk pastels over the top to add colour. And down here with some of the others, I don't know if you can see, perhaps if I bring it up and tilt, can you see the white lines? Embossing tool to leave, instead of putting black lines in, you leave the colour of the background. And I'll show you that again in another video, perhaps. Or perhaps I'll do it very quickly here, actually, because okay, which one shall I do it? Because this is perfect for leaves, I think, because I can put that central line in and then perhaps some of the veins coming off. And I think I'm going to do it on just one side of that leaf. And let me find a leafy green colour. Is that leafy green? Oh, it's a grass green, that'll do. And a tortillon. So if I put some of this green colour at the bottom. This is a grass green General's pastel chalk pencil, because it was sticking at the top. I have got some purple on this end of the tortillon, but it will mix nicely with the green. It'll create a much more evergreen colour there. So just that little bit of embossing has added some interest and texture to this particular leaf. And again, if you haven't got an embossing tool, you can use anything, a toothpick, a dried up ballpoint pen, anything that hasn't got ink or pencil or whatever in it that will just leave a mark. You couldn't really use a pin, that would be too fine. But anything that you can use to make a really fine mark, and you don't have to press hard, especially using a thin one like I've done. So that's fun to do. So I just thought I'd share that with you because I mentioned it. So for now, hope you've enjoyed. Look after yourselves, and I will see you again. It's probably tomorrow. Until then, find time to be creative. Bye for now. Bye.